Hey, I'm Molly Sims.
And I'm Emma Gormley. We're two girls obsessed with one thing, beauty.
And by that, we mean everything that makes you look
And feel
beautiful.
We're calling on our favorite health experts, industry insiders, and friends to answer all your beauty questions.
With a drink in hand.
Definitely with a drink in hand.
You're listening to Lipstick on the Rim with Molly Sims.
Can I just say sometimes I'm honestly, I'm so relieved we're not in the dating game anymore, because from what I hear from a lot of my single friends and team members, it is a wild, wild west out there.
I mean, truly, we heard some stories just the other day that were hair-raising and shocking.
Totally.
Looking at you.
We're looking at you. But what I love and Emisha loves about today's guest is that he brings a sense of clarity to all of it. And he isn't just here to talk about relationships. He's here to talk about confidence, happiness, and how to stop settling in every area of your life. We could not be more thrilled to have Case Kenny. He's a mindfulness educator, optimism enthusiast, viral author, and the host of the mega popular podcast, New Mindset, Who Dis, which we're obsessed with. You've probably seen his viral red pen notes on social media. They're all over the place. His new book just came out today. It's called The Opposite of Settling. It's a guide to dating without losing your spark, trusting yourself, and rewriting your definition of what is enough. With over 1 million followers and hundreds of millions of views on Instagram, Case is redefining modern self-worth. We're going to talk how to stop settling in life, love, tools for overcoming self-doubt, which a lot of us have. I don't care if you're 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, building real confidence. Yes, you can start later in life on that too. Quieting the overthinking mind, and why your spark is the most powerful thing you have. This is actually our second episode about dating. We did one a few months back with Kimberly Moffitt on all things dating after divorce, spotting red flags. We've been getting so many DMs. We decided to do one more episode. We're really excited to have you. We're going to go a little bit beyond dating and more into self-worth, confidence, and feeling empowered in every part of your life. I have to ask you, what does your work like, what do you, how do you do your day? How did you get into this?
Yeah, I mean, it is a little bit strange. I'm 37. I had a whole career before this, 11 years in digital advertising sales. Had a whole career. I was very this is what you do, and my brother's a cardiologist. My mom was an attorney. It's very linear, very traditional. So now, I say that I share my feelings for a living. That's my title. It's pretty accurate. I mean, I write quotes for a living, seemingly so. I write books for a living. Really, I mean, it's a passion that started for myself. The 2-minute version would be, I started my podcast when I was 29, just in response to my life at the time when I was working my job. I loved being a sales leader and a manager and all this stuff. And I very much aligned with it. And I was like, this is awesome. The blueprint's here. All I have to do is follow it and I'll be happy and successful. But then I was in every other area of my life, who I was as a person, as a man, as a brother, as a partner, as a son, I was I don't really know anything. I don't know which way is up. And I was kind of frustrated by the fact that I felt such clarity in my career, but not soulfully in who I was as a human. So I started the podcast in an attempt to know myself and to force myself to have perspective and say, this is what I believe. This is why I believe it. And I would do these 15 to 20 minute episodes where I would just hammer a question or a vulnerability or anxiety, and I would just try to make sense of it, speaking to it. And the rest is honestly history, because what I realized through that process, that was 7 years ago, before Sirius picked it up, before I started writing these books, was I was practicing a very practical form of mindfulness, not only listening to myself, but then speaking back to it and using words and emotional vocabulary to allow myself to feel something, but then to create a hopeful future based on that. And the rest is history, yeah. And now I get to really step into
You have a career with mindfulness.
Though?
Yeah, it is.
For someone sub 30 to be that open to yourself, to know yourself. Most people in their 20s are not that evolved.
For sure. And I think it was I need to do this. I need to force myself to do it. That was the effort. I was I didn't, it was
Did you think something was wrong with you?
No, I am pretty type A, and I was like, well, this is crazy. How am I one person here and another person there? Why do I feel so confident here? I want to be the same person. I need to figure this out. And then there was also elements of like, I was pretty unfair to myself and like, insecure. I feel like I was like formerly an introvert, which is fine to be an introvert, but now I can't stop yapping. So like there was an
I
evolution
cannot
there.
imagine you as an introvert.
Yeah, for sure. I would be a bit of a wallflower. And now I love to talk, and I love my opinions, and I love to share them. So I think there was definitely an evolution there, and like I feel like I've reinvented myself probably like every 3 years since then.
What's a common mindset that you see that blocks, whether it's an athlete, whether it's someone in, a CEO? What do you see across the board that's a common block?
Yeah, I would say that like the highest level is usually some element of like the permanence of an emotion. Like we feel an emotion, a negative one, anxious, burned out, misunderstood, unlovable, whatever it may be, and you feel it often enough, you have enough pieces of evidence to support it, it becomes this piece of permanence in your life. And, we don't always like speak to it in that way, but often we do. And like whether it's athletes, I do it for the NFL, or it's women's groups, or it's really anyone, usually what comes out is the way that these people are speaking to themselves in like very practical terms. They are identifying the emotion as the whole of who they are, as a part of a part of who they are. And there's a lot of great therapy approaches to helping you unblend the parts and the self, and it's a beautiful thing. But that's usually what I see. It's like, I am an anxious person, or I am this feeling. And, even if they don't necessarily believe it, with the way that they speak to it, it becomes their identity, and it becomes a very limiting belief. And then it becomes this scarcity mindset, and then it becomes this rushed mindset. So it really is this like cascading effect, and it comes from the way they speak to themselves. And a lot of my work is literally as simple as helping people in response to how they feel, instead of saying, I am anxious or I feel anxious, being a part of me feels anxious, but, and then how do we construct our emotional vocabulary around that second phrase? How can we honor an emotion? We're not trying to control it, but then how can we complete that sentence with something uplifting and allowing for things to change? That's usually the work.
I think it's something that's also a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? So like I see it, and I think it would be really interesting to take what you do with children. Because
Yes.
my oldest daughter is 11, and she was watching some TV show, and it was like, in those like Netflix tween TV shows.
Yeah.
And I remember hearing one of the girls talk about having anxiety. And then the next thing I heard is her go, oh, I feel so anxious about this. But I looked at her and I go, Maeve, do you even know what the word anxious means? And she doesn't, right? But I think it's almost like these kids are, and I'm not saying young kids don't have anxiety, but there's an element of it that is also perfectly normal. It's normal to have anxiety going to your first day of school. Everybody has it. The butterflies, that's normal. But I think that there would be an interesting way, and I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on it, on how you have those conversations at a young age with your kid, because that's almost how it grows and snowballs as they get older.
Yeah. I mean, that is like the most powerful anecdote and is the basis of my work, not only when it comes to like the social influence of certain words that we gravitate towards, and even like the therapy language that is so prevalent nowadays, which is incredibly useful. And saying I'm anxious is incredibly powerful, but is it the right word, and is it accurate, for one? And then I'd say like most of my work around emotions is helping people understand the difference between two things. Not entirely original to me, but it's the difference between price and punishment. That is, when we feel an emotion that's a negative one, the majority of us respond to it and say, I'm being punished. I feel anxious because I've done something wrong. I'm in the wrong place. I'm the wrong person. I'm being punished. Negative emotion equals resistance. Resistance means I'm doing something wrong. Punishment. And certainly there are certain emotions we need to pay attention to, and it is a red flag, and it means you're in the wrong place. But the majority of the time when it comes to certain emotions, it's not punishment, it's the price, where you feel anxious because you're in the right place and you're putting yourself out there, and it's going to feel a certain way, and it's an inevitability of the human experience. Like, I was a former introvert guy, and I started at this company as an account executive, sales role, worked my way up to regional vice president, and every meeting in the beginning I felt sweating, wrong place, wrong person, tripping over, everyone's judging me, no one likes me, everyone's laughing at me. And I think my initial reaction to those emotions, well, those emotions are true because I'm the wrong guy. This is not right for me. They are laughing at me. No one's going to buy what I'm selling. And I think now in retrospect, of course, I'm feeling those emotions because I'm fighting through it, and I'm doing the thing, and I'm earning the confidence. So yeah, it's price and punishment.
And that,
totally changes.
doing that and going in there and pitching and having to like that is a skill that you have to sometimes go through.
So to our listeners
Have
who
to.
identify with what you're saying, right? Because I think that there's probably millions of people out there that most people aren't in their comfort space when they're actually presenting, right? What was the first thing that you did or said to yourself where you felt a change? Like, what was that moment? Because I think there's a lot of people that feel the same way.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I could use the sales context for one. I mean, I think the work is a lot of like reframing. So we're never like, if you feel a negative emotion, like the work is not just being like, nah, forget it. Like we cannot do that. We can't sweep emotions under the rug. We have to honor the emotion. I think the most powerful thing to do is to say, hey, all right, I feel anxious. Even in those meetings all the time, to break the ice and to come back to myself, I'd be like, boy, I'm nervous right now. Like even yesterday, I was here in town doing one of my mantra sessions for this PR firm. And I do them a lot. But it was in a large conference room with 70 women. It was an all women PR firm, and I'm used to working with mostly women in advertising and just in my career. But it was like something about women give great, incredible eye contact and just like presence. And it was like daunting. I was like, oh my gosh.
There's a
And so
lot of hormones in here.
Yeah. I mean, it was incredible. And it was an amazing session. But like I started off with like, I'm a little uncomfortable right now. I'm a little nervous. And it just helped ground me. And the work is honoring the emotion, but then finding a way to pivot to a higher level emotion. So it's like the one that comes up all the time in like speaking circles is you feel nervous. A part of you feels nervous. We honor that. We're not going to be like, no, forget it. It's a part of me feels nervous, but the reality is I'm just really excited to do this thing, right? So it's the classic pivot. How can you pick two emotions on the spectrum, one of which is your reality, it might be negative, but one of which you could step into and use those to balance each other.
I also think other people are nervous.
Yeah.
Like I think other people too, when you're in those situations where you're presenting and there's 6 other people, there's a moment where you go, oh, they probably feel the same way I do as well.
Yeah.
Like, and that kind of helps, right?
Yeah.
Because you're kind of all in the same boat. You think everyone else is confident, but I don't think they are.
Yeah. Those are great examples. That's a great example too, because, it's crazy how like trying to control an emotion creates even more negative emotions. Oof. And I'll give you another example when it comes to like, there's a lot of like really cool neuroscience and psychology behind naming an emotion, priming you for how you're going to feel the emotion. Literally. So it's
give
like,
me an example.
So the example would be, they did this study and I read it in Harvard Business Review, is these social scientists had these 2 groups of college students do the same thing, but in 2 different groups. The first group, they said, hey, one by one, you're going to go into this room, you're going to be isolated, you're going to do a task. And then afterwards, we're going to ask you some general questions about your mental health. The other group, they said, hey, you're going to go into this room one by one, you're going to have some me time to do a task. Afterwards, we're going to ask you some questions. So the difference was priming with you're going to be isolated to do a task versus you're going to have some me time to do a task. And so it was the priming of isolation versus me time, which are 2 negative and positive connotations. And you can see where I'm going with it. Overwhelmingly so, the me time group, when it came to the kind of psychological activation questions they asked them, they showed general signs of emotional self-sufficiency, positivity, and joy. Just they did the same thing. They were just in a room doing something alone.
That is so interesting.
So they were primed for it. So it's like, it is such an interesting conversation because not only can you think in advance about something, but then also in retrospect, you can help label and relabel and reframe. Mm-hmm. So I think it's the difference between nervousness and excitement, owning it and reframing it. And I think my big passion in life is just the realization that the words we use to describe our feelings dictate how we experience the feelings every single time. And then to your point, it's like we're borrowing words that sometimes don't fit the feeling.
Yeah.
And I talk a lot about the difference between forest and tree words.
What are those?
A forest word would be anxious.
Oh, forest, yeah.
It's an umbrella term. It's a zoomed out term. And sometimes when we can't quite put our finger on how we're feeling, we'll say we're feeling anxious. And that's a good starting point.
Yeah.
But the better question is, what is the tree word? Is it misunderstood or burned out or, unlovable? Something more triggering, more specific. That's where the real work can be done. And that's where you really can help then separate yourself from the feeling. A part of me feels creatively burned out. All right, I could put that there and I could work through that versus I am anxious or I feel anxious. That is
you marinate in it.
You marinate. I'm seeing it, when kids get out of their 20s and going into their 30s, you see that shift. I've seen it in a couple of friends of mine. You see that shift of like, oh boy, pressure. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know. Should I be doing something? It's that I remember feeling that. I remember exactly where I was when I was 20, like just that those shifts. And I think now, I don't know, kids are really having a hard time with that shift.
Yeah, I mean, I think especially with social media, not to boohoo social media because I love social media. I think it's incredibly opened up perspective, but you know, it doesn't take long to quickly think you're not far enough ahead or in the right place or have enough or look a certain way. It's even I who practice this every single day and really try to practice what I preach. The algorithm really gets under your skin. And even as like an author, like I do well for myself as an author and I'm really proud of that. But immediately it's, well, this person is this on the charts and they've sold this many. And suddenly I feel like crap. It's a very slippery slope. I think I just in relation to like rushing and expectations and pressure, I think the biggest thing that I realized is like, yes, there are some like milestone moments in your life, certain ambitions and success and marriage and kids and all these things. But I have found, frankly, that the majority of our lives are found in the in-between moments, and Tuesdays and Thursdays and, you know, travel and writing the book. And like, that's the majority of your life. And if we don't find a way to appreciate those while working for more and working to, I suppose, go faster, we're going to look back and realize that we like skipped a good portion of our life. So the work is how do we appreciate the in-between being single and being married, starting your company and selling your company, writing the book and publishing the book. Like it's the majority of your life.
Okay. Can we talk about something that no one ever tells you about until it's too late? Your neck. Yep. I was so focused on my face with serums and sunscreens and moisturizers. And then one day I looked in the mirror and I was like, wait, what's going on down here? So when I got my hands on Go Pure's Tighten and Lift Neck Cream, I was so excited to try it. I've been using it consistently and I have to say it just feels amazing. I keep this jar right next to my moisturizer and I don't skip it anymore. It's like skincare for the part of you that's been forgotten until now. Plus, it's not just neck care. They've got a full line of body creams, moisturizers, and treatments that are actually affordable and feel amazing on the skin. With over 1 million jars sold, this beauty secret is no longer a secret. For a limited time, our listeners get 25% off Go Pure with code LIPSTICK at checkout. Just head to gopurebeauty.com, use code LIPSTICK, and you're all set. And after you buy, do us a favor. When they ask where you heard about Go Pure, tell them it was from our show, Lipstick on the Rim.
You went viral, and I see the red pens in your pocket
love.
Always
on your red pen quotes on social media. Where did that idea come from? And did you ever think in your wildest dreams that it would go viral?
No, and I think even more so, like I never like set out to do this as a career. Like the podcast was like, let me figure out my stuff. I started to write online in an attempt to like, okay, I've got these thoughts. Let me start putting them out there. Let me try to gain some followers and maybe this could be a thing. Of course, that was always a motivation. But the motivation to like handwrite things was, you know, when it's something's like digital, it just feels so disconnected from reality. I was like, I want to touch, I want to feel, I want to be creative. I've always had a creative background. Like I majored in Chinese and Arabic in college. Like I've always had a thing for language and like I went to Waldorf school growing up, like like creative. So I've always liked the physical. I want to touch it and feel it and smell it. And yeah, then I, started to write these in Chicago. When I lived in Chicago, I started writing on like coffee cups and like blank pieces of paper and I would post them up. And it was just a cool moment to take an idea and put it into reality. The crowded street on Wacker Drive or in the river in Chicago. And then things really started to take off when I started writing in red. I think red kind of cut through the noise a little bit. It's a very pop color. It draws attention and I like it. It's like some people were like, oh, red is violent and it means these things. And I was like, I love red.
Yeah.
It cuts through the noise. So yeah, now I'm always writing with my red pens and I tend to keep them on me. I wrote you two quotes in my pocket.
Oh my God, I love.
Yeah. Oh, I can't wait.
Okay, so we're going to break it down and then I want to get into the book. But how to stop settling in love and life. We have to talk about dating. People love talking about dating.
You must have the luckiest girlfriend. I mean, to
Oh
have
my
like
God,
the
she must be-
mindset.
I'm
like,
the luckiest boyfriend. I mean,
I love that.
the frame of mind is like,
Right,
evolved.
right now, more than ever, we're hearing people talk about how hard dating is and how often they end up settling. You say settling isn't just about the wrong person, it's about the wrong mindset. What does settling actually look like? And how do we know if we're doing it? How do you coach your clients to get into the right mindset when it comes to dating?
yeah, well, I think that the context of that question is important too. It's like there seems to be this lurking assumption of people who haven't found their person yet, or found their person and then lost their person, or found their person and decided they were the person, that the inevitability of dating and relationships is some sense of settling. We don't necessarily say the term settling, but we think, oh, it's this gradual lessening in some way. You lose your spark, and it's I becomes we, and we become boring, and it becomes this thing. Even like the original title of the book, I was going to call it the opposite of settling down, because I've got beef with the term settle down. Logistically, sure, settle down makes sense, right? You're not dating, you don't have a roster, you don't have dating apps. There is a certain amazing simplicity that comes with the right partner, right? And that is the down. But energetically, the term down, I was like, oh, this is
And
a
settling.
bad sales pitch. Down, I was like, the right person should help you get more out of life. And not just more in a sense of like travel and ambition and a partnership, but like the sense that the right person should make you feel like more of yourself. And like, that's the whole lens of the book. Like we are so lost in trying to figure out what is the lens to figure out if someone is right for me or not. And we're all trying the best we can to figure out what is it that makes the right person for me. And I don't suppose there's one right answer or a bunch of wrong answers, but I do know that the right person should make you feel like more of yourself. And that has to be the lens. Do they amplify these elements of myself? If you don't know yourself, though, how can you answer that question? And it's not just like know myself as far as what I want. It's know myself as far as what is the like existential essence of who I am, and does this person amplify it? So down, I feel like has no belonging there. And it's intrinsically tied to settling, which would be the obvious recognition that someone is under-delivering, that you're operating, that you're dating from a scarcity mindset, from a fear-based mindset. From, I think the biggest one that I see is people date to be liked instead of date to be seen. Seen aligning with what we just said about someone who brings out the best of you, someone who makes you feel like more of yourself. And these are just like simple, and who doesn't want to be liked, of course, right? It's a very base human desire. But I think all those things are like kind of a smoothie of potential for settling. So wrote the book to help people speak more optimistically about themselves, about what they deserve, about the potential for finding someone, and to use better words. So it is a book about words, which is the basis for saying, it's all good, I found my person, or saying there's no good people left out there. Two totally different energies.
Totally different energies.
What's the difference between high standards and unrealistic expectations?
Oh, man. Yeah, well, I think it's in the definition of those two words. Like, what is an expectation? An expectation is the assumption that something should go a certain way. That's tricky territory. What is a standard? For me, and maybe this is my definition, like a standard comes from past experiences.
Mm-hmm.
Like what makes a standard a standard? Like we could borrow other people's standards and say, I want this, that, and the other. That's great. What makes a standard really real and personal and something that I don't think you should ever negotiate on is I had this experience and it was bad. And it made me realize I want this. That is an unbreakable standard. And that is what we should be operating from, because I mean, I'm sure you have examples in your personal life.
We literally talked about it yesterday. All the
Yeah.
things that I went through, I have certain
Yes.
standards that I won't do again.
Yeah.
And that's so powerful.
Mhm.
And then on the expectation front, I'm sure you also have examples in your personal lives or in your friends' personal lives of where they ended up with someone that was not aligned with their original expectation. Height, career, personality, type,
Totally.
right? Type is a big one there. And just in regards to what you were saying about social media and the way that we borrow things, I think people borrow a lot of expectations as far as like what a relationship should look like. How fast should it go? What should a first date look like? Should it be a coffee date or should it be a Michelin star restaurant? People have very strong expectations around
Very
it.
strong. It's got to go this way. This is how it's got. And
And if it doesn't, it's the
If it
wrong
doesn't,
person.
it all
And
falls
it's-
apart.
So I say in the book, you should have no expectations. You shouldn't have low expectations because that would be an odd thing to do. No expectations, but the highest possible standards. And standards come from your past experiences. And you could say, this is my standard because. If you could do that, I think you're totally right in holding your ground. And any form of you're too picky or you're too needy or you're wanting for too much, I think just logically falls apart because you have that evidence.
For someone who's listening at home and single and wants a long-term relationship or a partner, where do they start?
Oh, well, I think
Call me.
I think logically you would start with dating, but I think, my whole thesis of the book is create a life you love and love will meet you there. And I don't necessarily buy into the whole love will find you when you're not looking remark, although I see it true time and time again. I talk in the book about the way that people are drawn to people who are their full selves, and not just in the cliche, but like literally science proves that people are drawn to non-conforming traits. That is, the things that we think make us weird or quirky or too passionate or too intense or too ambitious, like that is the thing that will draw on the right people. So focus on those traits. Lean into the things that make you love life, and it will draw on the right people. And obviously, it requires effort to find your person. It's not it's going to magnetize and just immediately draw on the right people. But you take that evidence. You also take the evidence that there's something called the liking gap, which is the anecdotal observation that overwhelmingly so we're more likable than we think we are. Like we go into conversations with people and the research shows that every time we say, I don't think they probably like us. And then when they talk to that person, they're like, yeah, that person was really cool. Why not? We chronically are hypocritical in a sense of thinking that we're unlikable. Lean into that observation, live your best life, date from that intention, date from the intention of someone should amplify my essence, my spark, my passion, my intensity. That's the starting point, right? Because at least now we have the lens of, do they make me feel like more of myself? I know myself because I'm focusing on myself.
Do you think the apps have made it harder?
I met my girlfriend on Hinge. So I would say no. I would say if you're trying to meet people, there's unlimited selection, but it's going to introduce a lot of heartache. And it's your ability to not do the whole dating apps have ruined everything. You are going to run into problems, 100%. Yeah. I mean, it's unlimited selection and people could say anything they want. Yeah. But I think if you're serious about partnership, I think it's go fishing where the fish are.
Yeah.
When you're dating, what are some things you can do or questions you can ask to make sure you're actually pursuing the right partner and building real compatibility? And how soon or too soon is it, or not soon enough, to bring up your emotional needs and your long-term goals?
Yeah, well, maybe I'll start with the second question, because I think like that's the biggest tripping point. And a lot of women I speak with, I don't want to be too intense. I don't want to be too needy. I don't want to scare them off is the biggest thing. And, we could obviously think logically about that and say, well, if it scares them off, they weren't the right person for you and problem solved. And obviously that's a hurtful process. And, the idea of like hiding some elements of what you want until they're lulled into you and then you spring it upon them. I think like the biggest thing that we need to have is like, let's say you're dating someone and, it seems to be going well. The problem that I think most people encounter is like everyone loves from the way that they want to be loved, or we love from what our ex, how they wanted to be loved, right? We're talking about love languages, things like that. We give what we like to receive. We give what worked for other people. Your ability to sit in that and say, okay, I think I like the way this relationship is going, but I don't really feel loved by them. I know they're trying and I do feel compatibility here. Your ability to sit down and have a really tough conversation, like, I know you're trying to love me, but I don't feel loved by you. Here's what makes me feel loved. That is like, it's a difficult conversation to have because it makes you feel selfish and it makes you feel all kinds of ways. But that I find to be such a powerful reflection of the right type of relationship. Your ability to say that and to deliver it in a way that is speaking to your essence, and then how they receive it. Do they get offended by it, or do they say, thank you? Like, I want you to feel loved. That is how you gauge compatibility and eagerness.
Do you believe in the right person, wrong time, or is it just an excuse?
I think it's an excuse. I mean, I think we again, word choice, phrase choice, we dress things up to protect ourselves. We dress things up to victimize ourselves, sometimes unintentionally. I mean, I think the reality is the right person will at least try with the timing. To upfront be like it's the wrong time and to not give it an effort, I think is a low level way of saying not that interested.
Yeah.
And I think most people are coming around to that. Some people might disagree. And certainly there are some instances, maybe like health and like certain things, but otherwise I think it's likely just a sign of incompatibility. Mm-hmm. Let's say what it is. And I think that's the majority
different career
of the case.
goals. You're, you don't live in the same state. You have different, you're on a different path. It doesn't mean they're not a great person. It doesn't mean you don't have a good time, but just it doesn't align at the moment.
But I love that point too, because I talk a lot about like the way that, and I talk about it in the book, it's called the peak end rule, about how we think back on experiences. Let's say you went on a couple of dates with someone and then they hit you with the right person, wrong time. A lot of people are very quick to villainize the entire experience, to throw the whole experience out because it didn't end up in a soulmate. And I reference a lot of different work of different philosophers and thinking, and like the idea being, I'm blanking on his name, but he's a philosopher. He says like the most sure sign of wisdom is cheerfulness, especially in the past. That is your ability to look back at date number 2 with this person and say, that was a good date and I appreciate that memory.
What's the deal with love bombing? And how do you know if it's genuine or it's manipulative?
That's a tricky one as well, because a lot of men think that that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to go big. That's how you show affection. That's how you win. Like, men operate a lot of the times from the perspective of winning, of going as hard as you can until you win, until it's mission accomplished. So I think it's tricky. I talk in the book about the difference between declaration and consideration. Declaration could fall into the category of love bombing. That is, large, over-the-top declarations of affection and love and trying to lean into potential. And I'm sure we all know, like, the majority of a relationship is built on consideration, like the small noticings, the small things. And I think those two things should go hand in hand. You should be with someone who practices consideration and from time to time goes big with declaration. So I think, to know if it's love bombing or not, it's more along the lines of, does the declaration come with consideration? Is it built just to win, or is it built to build and to show appreciation because it's alongside of the small things? And also, I mean, there's timeliness to it. Like, I live in Miami where, like, it's La La Land and rules don't apply, and first date Chanel bags and like Nobu. And it's a weird world down there. And I'm so glad to not.
We should date in Miami.
If you want a bag or you want a great dinner, you know where to go.
But I think love bombing happens in friendships as well, not just romantic relationships. For sure. I've seen that happen.
Interesting.
With, it's not isolated to just romantic.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of people operate. And sometimes it could be like a friend realizing they haven't been a good friend in a while. Yeah. And so they do a big declaration as a way to get back in. Yeah. And that's fine, as long as it comes then with, you're both on the same page, you're both there for each other. It has that element of consideration.
You talk a lot about settling, not just in love, but in life. What does that look like outside of dating, career, your friendshits? Just even like, I think, how we hear the word, ourselves.
Which I love that you wrote it on the cover of your book. Like, settling, I don't want to settle, or I'm settling. Like, you that emotion of like, ugh, why am I doing this? Or I don't know. Again, it's a negative feeling, but.
Yeah. I think it comes from a variety of things. I think it's really just a symptom of like what ifness, like just like that lingering what if, and I don't know, like a lot of like hesitation, a lot of passiveness, a lot of like a mentality of like life happens to me instead of life happens by me and through me and for me, and these like lean forward emotions. I mean, I think it takes different forms in your career, about how complacent you are in your career. I think that certainly is a form of settling. If you've, ever had a creative endeavor and you're not willing to step into it, I think it's those little things. I've referenced in the book a guy by the name of James Hillman, who wrote a book called The Soul's Code, which is really just the idea of like, we all have something special about us, and not to like pander and be like, oh, we're all special, but we all have something in us that is unique, that is slightly non-conforming, that needs to see the light of day. It's our essence. It's our soul's code. And we spend a lot of our life distracted from it, or even intentionally burying it because we think it ostracizes us. Passion, intensity, creativity. And the example in the book is like, it's an acorn, and you could plant an acorn and you can hope that it becomes a banana tree, but it won't. It needs to be an oak tree. It's the same thing about us. There's something in us that needs to see the light of day, that needs to be a radiant disco ball of energy.
You also see, marriage and relationships long term. Like, we can, context of dating, now you're in a relationship long term, whether it's marriage or dating. At what point do you think you're content and not complacent versus you also see people have like a midlife crisis?
We're seeing it now.
We're seeing it now. So is it a midlife crisis, or is it that they're waking up and going,
ooh, this is the wrong person. I've settled.
This is where is that line? Because I do think that marriages do go through these ebbs and flows naturally. Like, that's, to me, if you don't go through it, you're not being honest with yourself.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I'll answer it in the way that I feel experienced enough to answer it, because I'm not married. We'll be soon, but I don't usually try to only speak from my life experience. So I can't speak to like long-term marriage. But I would say I would think that it comes from recognizing maybe two key things, which I think leads to these feelings of like you feel stuck. And the first one is like, and again, I think we've lost sight of the plot a little bit. Like, playfulness is one. Like, if you don't have playfulness in your relationship, it's a big problem. Like, I think the point of a relationship is to return you to playfulness, like shared weirdness and shared humor and created shared humor and just an overwhelming element of playfulness. And I understand nowadays, like, things are serious, relationships are serious, but we're in the very serious mode. And I think sometimes that becomes the relationship and you lose that completely. And I think that is problematic, and we need to address that. And that could be an element of complacency. The other one, I mean, I think is the ultimate, and it takes many different forms, is like love is noticing. It's the consideration. It's the noticing. Like, do you still notice each other? Does he notice you? Is there an element there? Like, without that, it begs some strong questions, because then that cascades into everything else, and into conversation and communication, and the way that then becomes other words that also start with C, like criticism and contempt. The Gottman Institute, which I reference in the book, they've done some of the longest standing research on what makes a relationship work and what doesn't, and they can like observe couples in conversation and tell within like 15 minutes whether they're going to make it or not. And there's a lot there. Yeah, they're like magicians. It's crazy, because there are some very clear signs within a conversation around conflict, whether they're going to make it or not. And really what it boils down to is the idea of resentment. If you've allowed resentment to build in your relationship, obviously you can work through it, but if you don't, it is incredibly erosive. So identifying what makes you become resentful towards each other, towards yourself. Like,
I mean, we've seen it over and over with our
Communicating,
friends. It's what it is. It's resentment.
Yeah, that's what it becomes inevitably. Of course,
because they're not listening. Someone's not listening to what you're saying, and I just think
they're not taking me serious. They're not listening. They're not noticing.
100%.
What are some of the signs, whether it's in work, relationship, life, love, that it's time to let go of something, even if it's not toxic and you're just not aligned anymore? And how do you get to that point? Because a lot of people are like, I don't like my job. I don't want to do this. I don't want to be married. Like, what are some of the things you kind of got to clock before you get to those moments?
Yeah, again, it's like one of the toughest things, because we seem crazy, or we seem selfish, especially like when you can't put your finger on the thing of like, this is objectively bad, I need to leave. Because that line of logic is complete, right? Bad thing, leave bad thing, find good thing, right? We could rationalize that, and our friends support it. I think the question we need to ask ourselves, not to repeat myself too much, but I think it applies in a lot of different scenarios, is, does this thing make me feel like myself? And again, it requires you to know yourself, but like that, the pressure we put on ourselves to have everything figured out in life is really difficult. And how do we know? The question we should be asking ourselves in every small context, job, health, fitness, friendships, relationships, is, does this thing make me feel like more of myself? Like, literally, does this habit, does the way I drive to work, that like all the little things, and obviously there's some things we need to suck up and just do in life, but I think operating from that perspective at least removes expectations, which clouds the judgment of a question of, should I leave? Should I start another job? Should I move cities? Is trying your best to return to that. Does this make me feel like more of myself? At least it's a center of a universe that you can't control.
Do you believe everyone has a life purpose?
A life purpose? I think so, yes. But I think there's too much pressure associated with like finding it and finding it now. I think your purpose changes. And I think that's the gift of life. And I think you step into different seasons of life, you owe it to yourself to reevaluate your beliefs and your passions. Like, if we don't, at a certain point, I think it's a fair statement to say you're living an old one or you're living someone else's. So I think we all certainly do have a purpose. I think I'm lucky to have kind of found mine, which is like the ultimate, like the ikigai idea of like what you do, what you love, what you can get paid for, what helps the world. But I think that possibly is the exception. I think we all have massive purpose, but it could be as simple as giving love or nurturing or building a company. Like, it doesn't always have to be a huge monumental thing. And I do know it changes. It's similar to like my take on like soulmates as well. I think we could have multiple soulmates, and they come into your life at different times to help you break certain patterns, and they can be temporary and still amazing. And that was your soulmate for one chapter. And then
we were talking about that. I had amazing relationships. Yes. I fucking loved them. I mean, I hated them too at certain points, but I wouldn't change it.
Yeah.
It was,
that's a great mentality. Yeah. A lot of people don't, though. Back to the conversation about villainizing. It's like, if it wasn't permanent, if it wasn't the one, then you throw the whole thing out.
Yeah. I mean, I think it goes back to your point. You have to kind of know who you are and what you want.
But I think that's such a powerful anecdote as well, of like your willingness to do things a little bit differently. Like, even, and this is in the book, is something I came across recently, and I'm going to butcher the anecdote, but it was this social scientist who was really interested in the difference between swimmers, Olympic champion swimmers, college D1 swimmers, the average weekend swimmer. And he was like, well, what makes one excel and become a champion and what keeps one stuck. And he followed them all. Again, the ultimate Olympic best of the best in the world, and then your average and everything in between. And what he found was that Olympic champion swimmers didn't necessarily train more than the average swimmer. They just trained differently, which is a crazy statement to hear. That you're telling me like Michael Phelps didn't like swim more often than a certain college level swimmer. And I'm sure there's some incredible nuance there, but he said the biggest difference was that they trained differently. They did different things. They had different mindsets. And I just think that's a beautiful anecdote about life,
100%.
about love, about the willingness to just move a little bit differently to figure out what works for you, because we're all different. There's no way that what you need and what you need when I need is the same thing.
And so much of it, I think, boils down to belief in your own self-worth and confidence. Because I think you can have two people who have very similar skill sets are doing the same thing, but the person who believes in themselves and feels a little more confident always, I've said this to people before, be a little arrogant. It's okay.
I wrote this quote about confidence, which is inherently tied to self-worth, which is entirely tied to what you just said. Literally what I wrote is confidence isn't loud. It's a quiet glow that says, I know who I am and I'm good with it. And you should have a little pop to your step with that. I know who I am and I'm good with it. And you could take it, you could leave it.
I love that.
Confidence, it can look at a lot of different ways.
Sometimes the loudest person in the room isn't the most confident.
Rarely, I found, if anything.
Let's talk green flags. What are some qualities people should look for that often go overlooked?
Well, I like the topic of green flags because, again,
I've never heard that. Green flag.
Really?
Mm-mm.
Oh, well, it's a beautiful thing.
I've always heard red flags.
Yeah.
Well, that's exactly it. I think the internet is full of red flags, and inevitably, if your whole worldview is red flags, that kind of becomes what you were saying about creates the reality. So I personally like to talk about green flags. Some of my most viral quotes are an underrated green flag is, and I go on and on. I could literally have written hundreds of like small green flags. I did one the other day that people really loved. I said a green flag is when someone takes candid photos of you. It's a beautiful quality in a partner. They think you look really great. They take a candid photo of you. They know you'd appreciate it. Something like that. That's such a small, practical thing. Small little green flag. They notice you. Other deeper ones, perhaps. I wrote one that I know went viral. I was talking about and it's certainly a great reflection of noticing is like someone notices what makes you stressed or anxious, and they do their best to ease it and limit it.
100%.
What advice do you have for someone who's disappointed in something? Because I think that's something we didn't touch on. I think that everybody, not every day, but we are disappointed you didn't get a job or the date went badly. What are your thoughts on how to handle disappointment?
Yeah, I think it's a great topic because if you don't handle it in some way, it becomes your worldview, right? If you have a bunch of disappointing experiences with men, suddenly there's no good men left, and then that becomes your supporting worldview. I think, unfortunately, the answer is self-control in light of that. It's your ability, and I talk about it in the book, after a disappointing experience, after a hurtful, disappointing experience, to wipe the slate clean the best that you can, to sit down and say, okay, this is the new standard. And I promise myself I will not negotiate on this, but otherwise I'm not going to assume that every future man will do this. Like if you don't find the ability to do that, it's going to become an absolute self-fulfilling prophecy. I did a session yesterday on like manifesting. I'm not like a super spiritual guy, but like that word in and of itself is built on the back of disappointments. That is, you can block your ability to manifest if you allow those experiences to become the narrative. My whole thesis on manifesting, as simply put, is you have to talk to yourself in a way that supports the reality you want to receive, right? So if you're sitting there and you say, I want a loving partner, but there's no good men left, those two things can't be true at the same time. So you have to find a way to have those two statements support each other logically in that I want a partner, and I've been disappointed, sure, but there are still good men out there. So just like think about what you tell yourself versus the reality that you want to live, and make sure that they support yourself. Otherwise, how can you say there's no one who appreciates what I bring to the table? Why would you go on a date if that's the case? So I think there's an element of manifesting there with the story you tell yourself.
Okay, we have to do a little rapid fire. Last book you read?
I read my friend Young Pueblo's book, How to Love Better. So similar ethos, but he's the man.
Great quotes.
He's the man.
Yeah.
Best.
Favorite day of the week?
Sunday, for sure. I do a lot of my writing on Sunday. It's slow. It's pretty chill. I'm a big Sunday guy.
Night in or night out?
I would say night out now. Just like my girlfriend's a DJ and I love like supporting her and like live vicariously through her a little bit. Like I just think it's really fun to go out, like with a bang for like 90 minutes at the club and then leave immediately and pop a melatonin and go home.
Pool or beach?
Beach. I want to run around and roll around and do man stuff. I get a little claustrophobic just sitting at the pool.
Who's your superhero?
Superhero? Like actual superhero?
Yeah, who is your superhero in life? Like,
in life. I don't know. Maybe like I think I look up to my dad in a lot of different ways. I mean, to give the easy answer, just I think he's really taught me the value of discipline, which is a big theme for me.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee for sure.
Favorite cocktail?
I like Lafroig. It's a Scotch. It's like a very smoky Scotch. It's really a winter drink.
what's your guilty pleasure?
Mashed potatoes. Love mashed potatoes.
Planner or go with the flow?
Planner. I've got to know who's going to be there, who's going to be at the function, what time is the function.
If you could invent something to make the world better, what would it be?
I would just, I don't know, a mandatory empathy, some way that everyone is more empathetic. I don't know if it's
We were just talking about
you put empathy in the
morning.
water or something and everyone is more empathetic.
Yeah, that'd be
There you go.
great.
We always ask every guest before they go, if you could give advice to your 10-year-old self, what would it be?
Yeah, I think a lot of around our conversation around expectation, I would say that, and the quote that I always give that I literally wish I could tell myself is that there's no right way to live your life, but there's a wrong way. And the wrong way is to think that there's a right way. Very in line with what we were talking about their happiness and my happiness, to always think that there's one right way to date or right timeline or right version of success. And then to spend so long chasing it only to realize that it's not even right for you. I wish I can go back and be like, hey, there's no right way. Create your right way and figure it out instead of just blindly chasing an example or a timeline.
Comparison is the thief of joy.
Always. Every single time.
I love that. You're amazing. Your voice, your message, and your mindset are something we all need more of. You guys have to get the opposite of settling, how to get everything you want out of love and life without losing your spark. Make sure and follow at Case Kenny, CASE.KENNY. Amazing.
Thank you.
I can't wait for
Thank
your
you so
book
much.
once you have children.
yeah, we're gonna
in life.
I
That's
will
going to
write
be.
from that
We'll
experience.
have you
for
back
sure. Yes.
to talk through that.
Amazing.
Yeah, thank
so
you.
much.
It's
I mean it. Thank
really
you.
important. And, just quieting that mind and trying not to overthink.
Everything is a mindset. I think
It is.
that's like what I've learned so much in life. It's whether you call it manifesting. I that term to me, it can be like hokey. So I get it.
Yeah.
But I do think so much of what we think, we do project, and ultimately it becomes self-fulfilling.
Becomes
Whether
reality.
that's negative or
Yeah.
positive.
Words make your reality. So
Mhm.
without the right words, right dialogue.
And I think it's actually very simple when you think about it. It's not rocket science.
I think so.
Yeah. Thank
That
you.
was awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
We will see you guys next
See
week.
you next week.
See you next week. Thanks for listening to Lipstick on the Rim with Molly Sims and my ride or die, Emisha Gormley. We are so excited to bring you guys along on this journey with us. You can find us on Instagram and TikTok at Lipstick on the Rim and at Molly B. Sims. Or you can go to my blog where you can dive just a little bit deeper into my favorite products, trends, and more at mollysims.substack.com. And don't forget to check out our video episodes on my YouTube channel, Molly Sims. This podcast is a production with Sony Music. I wanted to give a special thanks to my team, Rosie Cummings, Kenna Ryan, Safine Kevorkian, and everyone at Sony Music. Don't forget to listen and follow wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss out on the fun.